This book is about the middle class, more specifically, the professional middle class, and its journey, intellectual, political, and moral, from the 60s to the 80s. Even the names of these decades seem to tell a story, one that begins with a mood of generosity and optimism and ends with cynicism and narrowing self-interest. And that, in the largest sense, is the theme of this book: the retreat from liberalism and the rise, in the professional middle class, of a meaner, more selfish outlook, hostile to the aspirations of those less fortunate. If the focus on one class seems unnecessarily narrow, I would point out that most books, and especially those which make large claims about the American character and culture, are in fact about this class and about it alone. We are told periodically that Americans are becoming more self-involved, materialistic, spineless, or whatever, when actually only a subgroup of Americans is meant. People who are more likely to be white-collar professionals, lawyers, middle managers, or social workers, for example, than machinists or sales clerks. Usually, this limitation goes without mention, for in our culture, the professional and largely white middle class is taken as a social norm, a bland and neutral mainstream from which every other group or class is ultimately a kind of deviation. Consider one of the great popular sociological endeavors of the last 3 decades, the lone crowd. In this wonderfully imaginative, wide-ranging book, David Riesman purported to demonstrate a deep change in the American character, a decline, one might say, of inner discipline and will. Only well into the book does the reader discover that many millions of Americans, the members of the blue-collar working class, are exempt from this characterological change, or immune, as the author puts it. No one seems to have thought this omission strange, though clearly Riesman's crowd was far lonelier than it needed to have been. Many other familiar and important books about the American experience and character turn out to be entries into the swelling biography of the middle class. The feminine mystique, for all its role in inspiring the feminist revival, was not about women, but about college-educated suburban women married to doctors, executives, psychiatrists. The Greening of America depicted only the greening of the white-collar crowd and their student young, the blue-collar working class again being immune, or in this case, past saving. Habits of the Heart, a chronicle of moral numbness and declining public spirit, is again, and by the author's honest admission, about the habits of middle-class hearts. These books only reflect a larger tendency to see the middle class as a universal class, a class which is everywhere represented as representing everyone. Television typically displays only a narrow spectrum of American experience and opinion. The pundits who dominate the talk shows are, to a man and an occasional woman, all members of this relatively privileged group, well-fed, well-educated, and employed in physically restful occupations such as journalism or college teaching. When we see a man in work clothes on the screen, we anticipate some grievance, or at best, information of a highly local or anecdotal nature. On matters of general interest or national importance, waitresses, forklift operators, steam fitters, that is, most ordinary Americans, are not invited to opine. Much, though certainly not all, contemporary fiction shows a similar narrowness of focus. A typical quality novel of recent vintage will explore the relationships and reveries of people who live in large houses and employ at least one servant to manage all those details of daily living that are extraneous to the plot. E.L. Doctorow has observed that when a novel featuring poor or working-class people does come along, it is usually judged to be political in intent, meaning that it does not qualify as art. The cultural ubiquity of the professional middle class may seem to make it an easy subject for a writer. There is no need to travel to offbeat settings or conduct extensive interviews to find out what is on its mind. One does not have to consult specialists, sociologists or anthropologists, to discover how people in this class order the details of their daily lives. Their lifestyles, habits, tastes, and attitudes are everywhere and inescapably before us. But the very ubiquity of the professional middle class makes it vexingly difficult to write about as a distinct class, and a class which, far from representing everyone, is also a distinct minority. Who can presume to step outside of it? Its ideas and assumptions are everywhere, and not least in our own minds. Even those of us who come from very different social settings often find it hard to distinguish middle-class views from what we think we ought to think. And for those of us who are inside this class, as most professional writers are by definition, if not also by virtue of shared tastes and habits of mind, the effort can be overwhelming.